we just at the end of our breakout room had a fantastic thought, and I was trying to write it down. So welcome back, everyone, and I hope you had great conversations, identifying more needs and resources that you may be aware of that you would like to share, stuff that we missed. And so what we'd like to do now is to harvest all this wisdom. And the idea is to have every breakout room report. Is that a good idea? Everyone ready? So whoever would like to start, just unmute yourself and start.
We could just go in order, 1 through 5.
We could do that too, yeah. Any hands up?
So I guess I took notes for group 1, and now I'm trying to find them here. The first question was which of these things resonated, and for Suzanne, it was all of these things. How do we take on paid employees? How to fundraise? She's in Local 2020 in Port Townsend. I just said that in Phoenixville, we're trying to figure out how to do strategy. Where do we go from here? Because we've just started some projects, but we don't have much long-term strategy. Kat on Orcas Island didn't have an official group yet, but they were about to form one, and then COVID hit. And she works with a nonprofit, and she's trying to figure out how to work together with that group, how to get the transition to work with that group, because they all have similar goals. Then they have like an active food guild, and the challenge is how to get the group going. Then David at Cooperation Humboldt, they have a very organized and successful initiative. They're most excited about about learning specific projects and programs from other TIs, especially repair cafes. We had an interesting conversation about repair cafes, and David also explained how their group, their core group, is trained in revolutionary understanding that they all share, and their transition. So at first the transition concept seemed irrelevant, but and an earlier transition had fizzled, but they don't even self-identify as transition, but just as a resilience group to a system collapse. And it's growing like crazy. Most interested in learning from other transition groups. Mark talked about how they've done a lot of things, and they've done a repair cafe. They bought their own utility company, but they tend to do one-offs, and they need to reform a little. So David went on about talking about repair cafes, and suggested that Transition US could do a lesson on it. Mark talked about how the repair cafes need to focus on the metrics of how much are we actually keeping out of the landfill, and use a complementary currency so the fixers can exchange with other items. And then when we went on to question 2, we figured we were already on question 2. Suzanne started a regional hub that met once a month. And Kat had talked about a repair cafe and reskilling event. And then David talked about their monthly potluck called Skillshare, which some people would come for the potluck and some people would come from the Skillshare. So they ended up seeing a lot more people. Then somebody asked if they have a strategic plan or a business plan, and he talked about how they're using sociocracy, and they have this internal study group. And they have to read, some of the things they read are deep adaptation, bell hooks, and the banks and tanks that we read last week. They all have a shared understanding of theory. And we can go to their website and catch up with these things. And they're not ready for collapse, but they're working hard to get ready.
Wow. There's a wealth of resources just there.
Right.
Thank you. Would group number 2 like to share? Mark or Shaktari? Or?
I think it's Shaktari.
Yeah, is Shaktari here?
Yes, I am. I'm
There you
sorry.
are.
I
Okay.
had someone picking up a little puppy behind me, so I had to zone out for a minute. Oh, wow. We dove deeply into a lot of this. We had, Mark, you're a board member too, right? So we had 2 board members in our group. And that provided another way of looking at these questions. And noting what was, oh gee, guys, I'm sorry. The most important things we all agreed were some feedback loops, looking at what's really what made so many of the transition initiatives not work out or slow down, and what could we learn from that. And we actually got down at the very end, and please jump in, Mark, or anybody else in our group at the end, and if I missed anything. But one of the things we got down to is realizing that when people ask us, for example, what's the transition movement about, we often, even if we can get it down to a little elevator speech, it's from one point of view. And what we realized is maybe what we should be doing is asking the person what's important to them first, and then having multiple elevator speeches, or whatever you want to call them, frames to match some of the ways people see the issues that we're all facing right now. And we noticed that everybody seems to be sitting in some form of fear right now. There are some commonalities that no matter where they are politically or anything else that are active right now. And so finding ways to get to the heart of the issues so that we're not yapping about surfacey stuff would be really, really helpful, and help us develop these mechanisms. And then we also looked at the idea of having, when we talked about feedback mechanisms, actually having a structure that's available so that individual people and whole initiatives can somehow connect to the network and find quick answers to their questions in ways that are, time efficient for them. So what else did I miss, guys? Hop in there.
I think I would say that we spent a lot more time kind of like providing feedback to the information that was provided, rather than getting down to how to implement these things. We probably could use another half hour to talk about implementation. But I think some of the other things that came out were how to provide structure to and support to TIs to help them survive. Sometimes there are rocky times, and how to diversify the membership of TIs so that it's not just people like me who are older and retired and so on.
There you go.
But we also maybe have some ways of actually providing income through the work that we do, employment in the TI or other projects. And then there's also discussion about how, there's so much protest going on, rightly so, for the injustices and the problems that we're seeing these days. And how does transition relate to that? And I guess we had an idea that perhaps we partner or we magnify the work of protest, and then we provide an option for people after the protest to build the world that we want to see.
And you mentioned something beautiful about how we want to be a big tent that contains it all. I think Rains also said something about instead of thinking that we are, how did you say that? We're
the transition tools is not the recipe book, but it's a list of ingredients.
yes,
You're the
and-
one identifying that we're all the cooks.
Right, and we're all the cooks, exactly. So that was the analogy we came up with. Anything else?
Wow.
Looks like a really rich discussion. This is great.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun. Thank you.
Should we go on to number 3?
Yeah. Number 3, I think that was myself.
Shelley? Oh, that was you. Okay.
I took notes, but if Shelley wants to, what do you think, Shelley? Or
No, go ahead, Kat.
Can't see everyone's face. Yeah, we also spent most of our time on question 1, and actually there was some conversation about the local aspect and how powerful that is, and how special that is to transition. That the focus is on how to now localize this issue or this work that needs to be done, and how that is both a challenge in the good sense and in the bad sense, in the sense that it can be difficult, and that it can also be difficult to keep the balance between this international, national movement and toolbox or list of ingredients, and then this keeping that in mind while also working very much in the local conditions. So many transition initiatives may need help with that. And so we started with some introductions of how we work with local initiatives. And I think one of the things that we identified there was that quite a few local initiatives start with this idea of, one, we are transition initiatives, though they may not call themselves transition, but they could be called something else, but they have this more inclusive idea of the work that needs to be done. But then quite often those groups sort of split apart or spin off, and folks leave with what they find themselves to be more passionate in. And then in the end, I think that's called that donut problem, right? That the core becomes empty because people have left to do their own stuff. And so how to keep that together is an issue we identified. We also identified one thing that all of us would love a workshop on, and that could be something that Transition US could organize, is for instance, on local currencies. Quite a few initiatives that I talked to in my calls have brought that up as something they want to work on. It's definitely on people's minds. And this brought us to the idea of translocal skill linking, the fact that we have among all of us in this movement so many skills and so much expertise, that the idea is that we just need to tap and invite that expertise in and then spread that to everyone. So if we could find systems of communication and connection, that could really ramp up the skill sharing amongst us. So that's something that Transition US could look into doing. Burnout, we identified burnout as a problem, and also the fact that it is not clear in local initiatives what the organizational structure is, and that there's also a lack of vision of what leadership should be. And this idea that these organizations should be flat, that's not really working, but that there's a lack of another way of being a leader, and how that could be done, and get some training in that as well. And another topic we found is that there are a lot of other groups out there doing a lot of work, and Transition US and a transition initiative may find themselves in competition with them. And the trick is, of course, to collaborate with them and to maybe be the connective tissue between them. Or there's many ways that a transition group could relate to all these other movements. But again, what is so special about transition that that all the other movements, as far as we could see, are not doing is the fact that you bring it down home, that you bring it home and make it local. And there's quite a few other things, but I think I'm over time and I don't want to do that. Anything else very important that I missed?
I just want to emphasize, I loved the comment on the end there. Came from Alan. We were talking about how we noticed that a lot of the people working in the local groups haven't looked at the transition handbook or lots of the other literature, and maybe we could do I forget exactly the term, but a re-unleashing or a releashing or a re-release or some kind of, anyway, the idea of bringing some kind of new energy around that, encouraging maybe a book club or something like that. Anyway, sorry, peace back.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are getting kind of close to time. I think we have about 5 minutes left in this section, unless you want to change something up. So we have two more.
I have a very short holding exercise, so we can take a little more time here.
Oh, okay, good. A couple more minutes. And also, Don wanted to report back on his minor the group with Ayoko, I think it was. So if we have time for that too, that'd be great. So group 4. Janice, do you want to?
Yeah, I was the note taker. So basically what I'm seeing that we had in common generally was that a lot of our groups are older, some more than others, but and that we're reaching out to other groups who are less old, less endowed with money, housing, etc., the things that other people lack, to collaborate is a good idea. And I think, groups can, one of the things we talked about is that groups can look a lot of different ways. They don't always have to just be a standard way that they look. That's okay. The challenges are like that reaching out, and then anybody else want to add to that conversation from our group?
We brought up the issue of, when our own communities are pretty homogeneous, that we can reach out to other communities nearby that are different from us, and how to collaborate with them by not coming in and just saying, hey, we're here to help. We know what to do. Let's help you out. But really coming in and listening to what their needs are, and finding out what they're already doing, and working together with them on an equal basis. So that was one of the things that we did. And I think Linda from Berkeley brought up the whole issue of just the how we all need to take care of each other. And she mentioned the fires and how they've been, unable to breathe for days on end. That we just need to really look out for our neighbors, and mutual aid is an incredibly important thing, especially these days.
And also we mentioned psychological help in terms of first aid. I mentioned the John Hopkins workbook on psychological first aid is a good resource. Go ahead, Sherry. Want more?
No, that's about it. Yeah, those are the highlights.
Mm.
Group 5.
I took notes, but I don't have to be the reporter. I invite anybody else from group 5 to try to make sense of the notes, or anyone would like to? Opening it up.
Go for it, Sarah.
So I'll do my best. So Polly and Eric from Woodstock, or a town near Woodstock, have the most active group at Sound, I would say. And they've been showing films. There are groups that are they have a monthly meeting, which is an overview of keeping an overview of what's happening in the area. They're trying to pull together an energy group, and they're, like I started to say, they're showing films recently around themes, and this has been a good way to bring people in. Further down, the notes mention that people show up. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are joining the movement. So there's a gap there, and I would like to just echo that in my own experience. And then in their experience, great collaboration with a local synagogue and Pharaoh Temple and Jewish congregation and a land conservancy. And there's then the questions arise about how decisions are made and who, is it, how the topics of films are selected. Do correct me if I'm not paraphrasing correctly. And then Brenda in Maine had been very active very early on in the transition movement, 14, 15 years ago, and had a very solid group, but it was hard to connect with the broader community. And then she left and someone else had stepped up, and this person unfortunately died suddenly, and the group dissolved, and now it's back together, but they're focusing mostly on, but they are focusing mostly on sort of the inner work of meditation and prayer. And that's what that is. Thank you for scrolling. Okay. And yeah, so you may have jumped past, well, okay. So, and then Juliet in New York, there's not a specific transition group in the city there, but she made the point about and this is kind of, our discussion, I think, overlaid both questions, so all one together. What are people's needs, or what are the problems? And the question, there's for instance, in New York and elsewhere, time banking is a very good way to help people meet their needs and also connect, which you pointed out is really the fundamental thing, is connecting people. And Brenda, Juliet, and then I'm in Jersey, and we have kind of a transition network. We've done sort of like that one-off thing for a number of years, and currently, sort of a lower level of activity, but the network still exists. And I could say more, but please, if anyone would like to pull something out of the notes that you feel we should mention. Anyone? I'll just make a pitch here, because I personally feel, and I have been somewhat uninvolved recently, but I haven't forgotten about transition. And really, if there's anything that can unite this country, to me, it's transition. It's like, it is apolitical, and it is about meeting community needs. And I'm restraining my language here, but I want to speak strongly that obviously the need for adaptation to climate change is here, and not everybody sees it that way. But even if you don't agree that climate change is a problem, you agree that likely that person will agree that the economy is a problem, and localization of food, energy, the economic activity is a good way to get someone off of some very nasty, toxic beliefs. I don't know. And so I do hope that Transition US will. I don't know. I do think there needs to be sort of a push nationally, and I would volunteer anyway. So I'll stop because I'm leaving the notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, what was it you were going to volunteer for? Sorry.
I in collaboration with funders. Look, there's people who are funding, like, I get messages from Act Blue and the political campaigns about, there's people who are putting their money into, who have money to spare, who are putting it into flipping the Senate. And there's folks out there I mentioned in the breakout, Warren Buffett's son is supporting a number of initiatives in Kingston, New York, including, from what I understand, a local farm, a transition type effort. So I volunteer to try to figure out how to get somebody who, with some money, would like to donate to a campaign and to put transition out there as a solution to the problems that plague everyone. So I can follow up on, or yeah.
Great.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Group 6?
Yeah, I think I can be quick. We had a lot of juice around just being able to connect and learn from other groups more easily, connecting by regions, mapping by topic as well as context, for example, urban versus rural areas, and a communication platform to help groups connect more easily. So mapping and communications. And I know Rati, our communications coordinator, is working on a mapping project as part of our new website. I'm not sure how complex it'll be, but that's something we could potentially use support with. And I know Galen is interested in a platform for connecting local initiatives, and that's perhaps something he could use support with, our wonderful Collaborative Design Council tech facilitator, Galen. We also talked about messaging support, succinct messaging, short videos, and other ways to share inspiring stories more accessibly, and kind of the culture that we're in of, social media memes and very short videos. Support with engaging youth. One idea was through connection to the Green New Deal. We heard a lot from Chuck Lind, who's not here now, from Simply Living in Columbus, Ohio, which is a hub for a handful of groups in that area, and they are doing some really cool stuff, including work around the Green New Deal with a master's student at one of the local universities. And there was also requests for best practices around strategic partnerships and collaborations.
Wow. That's a wealth of wisdom.
Yes.
and what a harvest right there. Thank you, everyone. In the interest of time, I suggest we skip the grounding exercise that was on the agenda and do this very last bit, which is quite important, though Don has. Go ahead, Don.
I just wanted to say something from the Transition US perspective is that, I think a lot of the feedback that's been given today in this session represents projects, campaigns, issues that we really care about at Transition US. I would go so far as to say we see local transition initiatives as the North Star of our work. That if we have hundreds of thriving transition initiatives throughout this country, that transition will make a big difference, that it will enter into the national conversation, and that it will start having a much more widespread impact. If we don't have those thriving initiatives on the ground, a good idea will only get you so far. So I wanted to say that, and I wanted to say also, right now it's just 3 part-time staff. So we definitely need your help. And there's lots of ways to plug in now through the Collaborative Design Council, through various national working groups. on different topics through our What Is to What If campaign, through donating, through volunteering, through internships. So if you have an idea for how you can help move these things forward, how you'd like to help move these things forward, I just want to invite that conversation. You can feel free to contact me anytime. And I would be happy to try to steer you in the right direction, because it's really going to take all of us to make this happen. And just really thank you all for being here.
Wow.
Thanks, Don. And I'd actually like to really make a plug for Transition US, that with Don and Marissa and Rati's leadership, it's really been growing and finding all these new interesting things to get us excited about. So I really thank both of you, Don and Marissa, for all the work that you do. And I also would like to give a plug for regional hubs. Our Mid-Atlantic group has been really helpful in just supporting each other and, you know, learning about each other's successes and helping with each other's challenges and really just kind of bringing ourselves together and cheering each other on month after month. So if anyone is interested in joining or forming a regional hub, I highly recommend it. So thanks for that plug, and Kat, I'll let you finish up.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, all I have to say after this is thank everyone for being here and being so committed to this work. And looking forward to hearing from all of you. So definitely the local initiatives working group is gathering a lot more of this information. And on the slideshow that you have a link to are our email addresses and our telephone numbers. Just give us a call. We very much welcome that and invite that. So we made it to the end of the evening together, but it's not the end.
May I ask a question? Since I brought up this concept of funding, and Don, I take you are representing the national entity. What are you finding, if I may ask, if you don't mind, if you are able to share, because I know Rob Hopkins, I know there has been already, people have been gone to. So if you don't mind sharing anything that you can about.
I wouldn't mind. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I don't want to necessarily keep everybody here because we're at time. And this is the perfect plug. Come to the next National Network Strategy conversation. It's going to be on resourcing our movement. So we can talk a lot about it then. But happy to have a email or phone conversation in the meantime.
When is it, the next meeting?
October 27th at the same time.
And you can register for it the same way you registered for this call.
And you're actually already registered for it, because when you registered for this call, you got the choice to select all the other calls in the series. If you selected the other calls in the series, then you'll get a reminder with the Zoom access information. If you did not, then you would need to register for that one as well.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care, all.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to see
Thanks
you
a
all.
lot.
Thank you all.
Bye,
friends.
Marissa. Bye,
Bye,
Kat.
everyone.
Very well, and enjoy.